again to UBC TV.
Thank you.
And I'll start with you, Balozi, the ambassador. You're staying in Uganda, and of course the relationship between two countries, Uganda and Tanzania, and of course also the relationship of TBC and UBC. Right. Just passing comments about those.
Oh, thank you very much. We have a very good relationship between Tanzania and Uganda. It is a historical relationship, but as of 2000, we started to revive the defunct East African community, the first one. And our president in the region at that time was President Daniel Arap Moi of Kenya, Benjamin Mkapa of Tanzania, and Yoweri Kaguta Museveni decided to revive the East African community. And then from 2000 on, we started also to invite other members. Then I think Rwanda and Burundi join in, and now we have South Sudan. And this is a very good thing for East African integration. And I think on the pipeline we have DRC as a prospective member, and others also want to join. But at the bilateral level between Tanzania and Uganda, recently, the first official visit of our current president, Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, took place at 11th of April this year, and she came to Entebbe State House to witness the signing of the East African crude oil pipeline, some of the agreements, and the launching of final investment decision. So this is a very good step in our relationship, but if you go back a little bit, the relationship between Uganda and Tanzania in the recent or the modern history goes back, I think, from 1979, that's a recent one, when we started to have more political, security and defense kind of diplomatic relationship. But afterward, we were more into the economic relationship, and that's why we revived the East African community. And then we have all these kind of other trading activities, businesses, movement of people, goods and services, but also the exchange of students. There are quite a number of Tanzanian students who are studying here at the higher learning institutions here in Uganda, but also there are quite a number of Ugandans in Tanzania. Yeah, so this are kind of relationship which our two countries enjoys. And briefly, my stay here in Uganda is quite comfortable. Since I came here, I got a very good cooperation from all sectors, and I quite like it.
Very important.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very, very important. Dada Mwasioke, you are the chief news editor for Tanzanian Broadcasting Corporation, and normally you, the chief news editors, the editors on desk and all that, you're not seen on TV, you're not heard on radio. People don't normally know that you are actually there. First and foremost, how do you feel being part of Pan-African Friday today, and of course being live here on air on UBC TV?
I feel so much okay, but for me, I am lucky enough because I'm also a news anchor and a TV and radio presenter. So I'm still seen on TV, and I'm also being heard on radio each and every week. At least once per week, I anchor news on TV, and at least once per week, I also do a morning show, which I've been doing for 5 years, and operation for the last 7 months. So for the last 13 years, I've been doing presentation on TV, but it's a privilege for me to be seen on UBC TV, really a privilege, and I'm honored to be here.
Karibu, thank you so much for joining us, and of course we now, these are guests from Tanzania, having them joining us on a Pan-African Friday today, and specifically today we want to look at what we call the lingua franca, the African lingua franca. But of course, specifically, we're going to talk about the language of the region, Swahili, which also, I think, it should be the Pan-African language. But of course, we're trying to see and looking into it, the merits and demerits, what we think is possible, not possible, in finding a language. Because when we talk about lingua franca, is trying to find a language that brings all of us together. Remember, these are not normally languages that are indigenous to us, but that's where we are today. We want to focus so much on the Kiswahili language as a Pan-African language, and to see whether it's actually something that is attainable. Akol Ntanza na wewe, I'll start with you because you've really been in this thing for quite a long time. Let's see what your submission is.
Well, I think Kiswahili as the Pan-African language for wider communication is something that has been on so much that in 2019, the African Union Language Academy, actually ACLAN, in conjunction with the East African Swahili Commission, came up with the Dar es Salaam Declaration, whereby they looked at it, because these are two organs. African Union Language Academy is an organ of the African Union, then East African Swahili Commission is an organ of the East African Community, to see how really they expedite Kiswahili as the Pan-African language of wider communication. But also Swahili being chosen as a Pan-African language for wider communication, there were a number of issues that were actually considered. One, we find that the languages at that time they were looking at was Hausa, then there was Arabic, there was Fulani, and then Kiswahili. But what came out clearly is that there are more countries on the African continent that use Kiswahili than Hausa, than Fulani, and also Arabic. Then the other issue that also came out clearly is that Kiswahili has already institutions that have been set for its development. For example, like the East African Swahili Commission at the University of Dar es Salaam, they have an Institute for Swahili Studies. So it became easier for say that look at this is already, because in language, in social linguistics, when it comes to language planning, when you're choosing the language, you look as maybe in a national language or an official language, you look at a language that is actually has been developed. So the found that Swahili is already developed. Then the other consideration was that Swahili was looked at as a liberation language. A liberation language in a sense that when you look at the SADC countries, the southern part of Africa, given that the African Liberation Committee was centered in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, during OAU, when actually during that time the continent was trying to fight off colonialism, you find that ZANU, which later became ZANU PF, actually Mugabe, the current President Mnangagwa were in Tanzania, trained in Tanzania to go and fight for the independence. The likes of Joaquim Kisano, the likes of the late Samora Machel also trained in Tanzania to go and fight for their freedom. So we also look at South Africa, actually, also still they had bases in Tanzania. So even Angola. So you find that the southern part of Africa, when it came to fighting for their independence, Swahili, Tanzania played a key role. And in going back, really, they went back with Swahili. That is why in Mozambique, almost all the presidents they've had speak fluently Swahili. In Mozambique, even their army, actually, when it comes to some of the trainings, some of the things, the songs are in Swahili. Now back to Eastern Central Africa, of course, we shall see that as Balozi said, 79, of course, the Tanzanians played a key role in helping the Ugandan exiles actually to overthrow the dictator here in Uganda. You also see that Kabila Senior, that is Joseph Desire Kabila, was in Tanzania. Yes, Laurent Desire Kabila was in Tanzania, and that's why he moved to lead a group that overthrew Mobutu Sese Seko. So now you realize that Swahili has been used as a language of liberation. So basically those are among the factors that were considered in looking at how...
Well, that's very important. You know, when you talk about African nationalism, you remember that, of course, Tanzania was the seminary of African nationalists, and the high priest there was Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere the other time, and so they kept coming here. Ndugu Mtuta, when you read Uganda's constitution, Article 6 of the constitution talks about the official language of Uganda, which is English, but the second clause in there says, Kiswahili shall be the second official language in Uganda, as shall be prescribed by Parliament or by law. Parliament shall by law prescribe that. And amazingly is even when it is in a constitution, we don't seem to actually have Kiswahili as our next language or a second language. We use many of these other languages, and we have some phobia with Kiswahili. That Kiswahili is actually a very tough language. People who come to rob you, to break into your house, do all these things, use Kiswahili. People who want to defraud you, use Kiswahili. People who want to do bad things to you, use Kiswahili. So we've known Kiswahili as a language that is a terror language. You know, it's a terror language. Do you think marketing and selling Kiswahili as a Pan-African language is something that can be embraced by the majority of Ugandans?
I think, of course, the language sometimes grows independently of the circumstances. You may not like that particular language until you find out that it's the only language you can use at that material time. Now, with the Swahili, of course, one would say it has been used as a brutal language, but maybe that is also has to do with the nature of its development. But at the same time, I don't think, because when I was in Zambia, I didn't expect that they could speak Swahili so much, so well. Until when I was in a hotel, then I was trying to talk to this guy in English, and the guy is talking in Swahili, calling another person who could help me with English. I'm like, wow, we're suffering with English. You can speak Swahili? We know Swahili. So if you are talking about it in that negative aspect, maybe it is not the general feeling within the continent and the region. Swahili, as of now, is the leading, is the major language in the continent when it comes off to the major language is spoken, with about 100 million speakers on the continent. So you cannot afford to put it to the periphery, because with those numbers, the next to it is Arabic, which is even given the expanse of the geographical areas, still much as it is spoken much in the northern part of the continent and the rest of the Arab world, you find that Swahili still remains the major language. You go to South Africa, come to East Africa, go to Central Africa, North Africa. So I think Uganda was only delayed to have this language inaugurated as an official language, because when you look at the business community, when you look at the traveling community within this Great Lakes region, and the social life in the Great Lakes region, and of course beyond, you realize that Swahili is the greatest language that we can use in terms of communication, both in the rural but also in the urban, because there are particular languages that are spoken in the urban areas, and when you go to the rural areas, you cannot communicate. But Swahili cuts across, whether you are in the urban area or in any of the cities of the Great Lakes region and Africa, or you go to the countryside, still you find someone you can communicate to in Swahili. Okay,
Mr. Ambassador, Doctor, Karibu again. And it's very interesting when we talk about Kiswahili here. We associate Kiswahili in Uganda, for example. I'll start with Uganda before Yakale Spring, across the region, even on the continent. Kiswahili to us is actually known as a language of forces, the military, police, and you know, that's how they get their instructions, and that's how they communicate to all the things. And if you spoke Swahili today on the streets of Kampala, somebody would think you may be an operative, you may be in the forces, or even a foreigner in a way. But looking at the language itself, proposing it, or even thinking of it as a Pan-African language, in consideration of the other countries on the continent. For example, when you look at a country like Nigeria, it has a population of about 200 million people. Now, one Nigeria covers the entire East African region in terms of population. Now they have their Fulani, they have their Yoruba, they have their Pidgin English, and quite a number of these. How do we think we can market and talk about the Kiswahili language as a Pan-African language that can be appreciated by all of us in the region and across the continent?
Thank you very much. I think you raise a very important point here. You say that in the army and the military, the language which they use is Swahili.
Is predominant.
And I think the reason behind that, the army doesn't pull from, it's not formed by one tribe.
Exactly.
It's formed by different kind of tribes within one country. And a unifying language to a lingua franca for all should be a language which is accepted by all.
Oh, yes.
And that's why you have Kiswahili in the army and the police and all these forces. But if you have an army which speaks one tribe language, then that's a cocktail for disaster. And therefore, that connotation that Swahili is associated by, forces and things like that, I think that's just a way to try to push it aside. But if you embrace that if it can unify the army, then it can unify the nation. Then you have a language which can unify the entire country. And not only one country, but it can also be a Pan-African language. For example, if you go back to Kenya, and with a recent history, I think it was a decision by President Jomo Kenyatta, the late President Jomo Kenyatta, in 1970. He said that we are not going to accept a colonial language to be our national or official language. And therefore, we are going to adopt Swahili as one of our official languages. And that was just less than 50 years. Oh, okay, 50 years now. 51 maybe. Then you go to Kenya today, everybody speaks Swahili. It doesn't mean that the Kenyans doesn't have their tribal language, they do. But if you find somebody from the northern Kenya or southern part of Kenya or anywhere in Kenya, everybody speaks Swahili. So Swahili is a lingua franca for Kenya, for Tanzania, and I think it's just a matter of a decision, political decision maybe, or political will. And if you look at Swahili as it is, it started as a trading language.
As a trading language, yes.
Yeah, and it goes back from, I think the first Swahili literature was from 1652. And it was, at that time, Swahili was spoken from all the way from Mombasa, you go all the way down to Sofara in Mozambique, and along the coastal area. And the Swahili is a combination of many Bantu languages, I mean African language, traditional languages, with the influence of the Portuguese, the Germans, the English language, and then the Arabic language. You find all those languages managed to influence some of the vocabularies into Kiswahili. And therefore, when the decision was made in Tanzania at that time, Tanganyika, when Mwalimu was trying to struggle to get Tanzania to become independent, the Tanganyika at that time, he realized that there was 120 tribes in Tanganyika.
At that time? At
that time, yes. 120 tribes. And everybody speak their own vernacular. How are you going to unite these people to form a single front to fight for independence? Then Swahili was the only answer. So Mwalimu encouraged that wherever I go to a meeting, he's going to give his speech in Swahili. And people started to pick interest. So they were using their tribal languages, but at the same time they were learning Swahili. And by the time we got independence, 1961, everybody was, were trying also to adopt Swahili, and Swahili became very common. And if you look at Zanzibar at that time, 100% of the people are speaking Swahili. So it made it very easy for Zanzibar and Tanganyika to form the United Republic of Tanzania. So this kind of integration or this kind of union formed the basis of Pan-Africanism. Because when you have two countries decided to unite to form a single government, and as you know, we are talking about East African political federation. So if you have a number of countries trying to unite and then they speak different languages or maybe certain tribal languages, it will be a bit difficult. But if you have a lingua franca like Kiswahili, it will make life much easier. And today, as we speak, if you go to all part of Eastern Congo, they speak Swahili. You can't fail. If you don't understand French, you'll be able to get by with your Swahili.
Exactly.
Of course, they will mix with Lingala and French, but at least you'll understand. You go to Zambia, you'll find people speaking Swahili. You go to Malawi, it's the same. You go to Mozambique, you go to Djibouti, you go to part of Madagascar, Comoro, and you know, all part of SADC countries, as Mr. Kolev said. You'll find Swahili speakers. So Swahili is not just, I mean, no single country can claim that, you know, this is our mother tongue. Tanzanian can proud themselves that at least majority of Tanzanians speak Swahili, but they cannot claim ownership of Kiswahili because Kiswahili have all the words. Some of the words are coming from Baganda, maybe Bunyoro, Kitara, Kingdom, and you know, they contributed to the vocabulary of Kiswahili. And therefore, Swahili, I think, qualifies to be considered as a Pan-African language because it was a language which helped, you know, in the liberation struggle. But today, if you go, say, to Europe, to many other countries, you won't fail to find some Europeans who speak Swahili. Those who have been working in certain part of Africa, East, Central, and even southern part of Africa. Okay. You may find, I remember while I was a student, I was in Europe at that time, and we met he was a European guy, and he was in a TV station, just like we're doing here, and he was speaking some Swahili, and then of course he tried some few vocabularies of Kiswahili. And this guy asked him, I say, hey, you speak so many languages, but where did you learn, how many languages do you speak? He said, well, he speaks English, French, and some Portuguese and Kiswahili. Because he wanted to, I think, to show off that he understands some African languages. And then they asked, where did you learn your Kiswahili? He said, well, I learned it in DRC, Congo. I was expecting him to say Kenya or Tanzania, but his Swahili was from DRC, Congo. So this is, you can see how Swahili can influence as a unifying language, than being a divisive language. I think it's a unifier. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador, Dr. Aziz. My sister Mwasioka here, speaking as a journalist, did you think and do you consider that this is actually the bet that we can sail through with to market Kiswahili for all the other countries to appreciate it as a language that is not owned by Tanzanians or Kenyans, but it's a language that we can pick up and it becomes the lingua franca for the continent. From your journalistic point of view, did you look at this as a tenable dream that we can chase after and actually achieve?
Of course, for so many reasons, because as journalists, we are an important group in making sure that a certain language...
Setting the agenda.
Yeah, setting the agenda of a certain language to expand more and more in different parts of the world. Swahili being one of two best languages in Africa and being among 10 languages in the world, it is an important language. And also it is very important because nowadays people are taking Swahili as an opportunity too, as an economic opportunity for not only for journalists, but for teachers who teach Swahili in different parts of the world. You see all the important organizations like African Union, like SADC, East Africa Community, they all mark Swahili as a very important language, and they all use Swahili as one of the official languages when they meet. So Swahili is really very important in Africa and in the rest of the world, because we have seen recently different nations from different parts of the world, for instance China and Korea and so many other countries, they're interested to learn Swahili, and not only interested, they know Swahili is an opportunity for them. So they even come in Tanzania to learn Swahili. For instance, Dar es Salaam University, the University of the Nation, there is a Swahili course, and there is Swahili kwa wageni, Swahili for foreign students. They come to learn Swahili. Yesterday we had Caroline. She was in Tanzania for 6 years, doing her degree, master's and PhD in Swahili. Now she can qualify to come and teach Swahili in universities in Uganda. So Swahili is an opportunity to me. So for us journalists, we really see there is an important debate to carry forward. And for Uganda, it is really important to establish more movements for Swahili, because back then it was Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, the old East Africa community. Now we have Burundi, we have Rwanda.
And,
when you go
South
to and South Sudan, but if you go to Burundi and Rwanda, their pace of learning Swahili is much more fast than the pace of learning of Ugandans to learn Swahili. So for me, I would really wish Uganda, the part of old East Africa community, to increase their steps on learning Swahili language, because Swahili is really an opportunity. But I'm happy UBC TV is having at least a news bulletin of Swahili of 30 minutes. That is an opportunity, a very important opportunity. So it's a step also. So for Ugandans, they should take Swahili as an important language, as a golden language, not as a brutal language as they used to before, even though there's a difference between now and past few years maybe.
How do you think we're going to manage the narrative of not construing Kiswahili as a Tanzanian language? Because if you actually took people into the streets here in Kampala and ask them, do you know of any tribe in Tanzania? They may fail to tell you that they are Chagas, they are these, they are these, they are, you know, they may fail to tell you all those, but they'll say, we know they are Swahili people in there. And when we speak Swahili in Uganda, the next question or the next thing is, have you been to Tanzania? Are you Kenyan? Are you, because it's really a language that emanates or comes from some other country somewhere. So how do you think we're going to manage the narrative of Tanzanians not imposing their language on the rest of us?
I think it cannot happen in one day. It should be movements of different people and important groups in the society, including people from the media. They should start the movements. They should start doing more debates, more programs on Swahili language. They should involve citizens of Uganda, including people from universities, people from secondary schools, and all the important groups should engage more and more debates and should try to educate people that Swahili is an important language. It is also a language which can give someone opportunity economically. So I think slowly the attitude of thinking Swahili is for, it's a brutal language, will fade away, and people will begin to take Swahili as an opportunity and also as a pan-Africanist language.
Okay, well, very important. Thank you so much, Dada Mwasyoka. Ndugu Mtuta, we are still grappling and struggling to actually understand, speak English fluently or even ably well. We're still struggling with that, and it's our official language. Today, we have leaders, members of parliament, councillors at all different levels who cannot even take oath in English, something that is written for them. I just read and say, I, Mututa, do swear in that I shall do this, you know. We're still grappling with English itself. Our national anthem is in English. And if you just took on somebody to actually recite the national anthem and tell them, don't sing it, but recite it, somebody will fail to actually do that. Now, as we're struggling with English on one hand, we want to adopt another language, which is not now the Luganda that I grew speaking, not the Lugisu, not the Luo, anything. So how do you think this should be managed in a way?
Yeah, but the opportunity also, like she put it, comes with a lot of opportunities because learning language is a skill. Of course, the people who cannot learn the extra language other than the mother tongue or father tongue, one put it. But Swahili comes with a lot of opportunities, especially for people who are interested in academics in this region and the continent, for people who are in business, for people who are professionals of whatever sort, because communication is key, and you are not going to communicate with people if you are not going to relate with them in a language that they understand, which you also understand. It's true that English has been here for quite some time. It was not imposed on us, but of course we are forced to learn it because you have to communicate with the next person, and it has become so bad that you, even in a family of people who are the husband and the wife are from the same tribe, but you find people speaking English, and then you're like, so what's going to happen after this? It means we are losing all that holds us together. it's not bad to speak English because we are using it here, and many people want to use it for purposes of communication as a language. But we shouldn't also negate, we shouldn't also give up on our own as Africans, because should we do that, then we shall disappear. We have language. The University of Harvard has categorized 4 families of languages, especially in Africa. We have the Afroasiatic, we have the Nilo-Sahara, then they call the Khoisan of the South African side, and also the Niger Congo, or Congo Niger, like that, in which then East Africa and other countries are categorized. But when you look at all these blocks, you realize that there are many languages. Now, some people think that Swahili was a language which was brought in by Arabs, by other people. No, Swahili is us, because like the ambassador said, we have expressions and nouns from the Bantu, actually is where this Swahili is born. So it is, we are related with it, that there is something, even without knowing it, when a person speaks, you can understand it. So it becomes easy for us to communicate. Now the other problem is that we normally look at exotic languages where a person is going to study and then be paid for it. Of course now Swahili is becoming one of them, but in the future one would think of speaking English. You become very exotic, and you become very important. It's now time to also begin to learn that our languages, not only Swahili of course, but all our traditional languages are as important as, or even more important than some of these languages that we learn. Because I know of people who have studied English, who have done literature in English, and it stops there. But if you have done literature in Swahili, you are going to be a resource in this continent and part of in Africa. So I think it's high time that political decisions are taken geared towards the promotion of Swahili and also the promotion of our traditional and local languages, that people are able to relate and talk. Sometimes you are in this big place and you are seeing Africans and they cannot even greet each other in a language that is common to them. It is disheartening. And yet there are people that, blocks of the world have developed because of the common languages. When you look at the Chinese, they have a vast population. They can speak in their Chinese. Not just, it also has differences, but still can communicate. When you look at the Germans, they have maintained their language. They still, much as they are learning other languages, but they still can communicate. In fact, when you are in China, these guys are not ignorant of the English language that we speak, but they are not going to allow you to speak to them in the language. I mean, they are not going to speak English. They will have an interpreter to interpret much as they understand, but they would want to have that to promote their own. So it is also important that I would wish to see in the future, when we're also having conferences and we're having our leaders speaking in Swahili and others are interpreting for them in Swahili and other languages.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much, Ndugu Mtuta, for your submission here. The discussion, of course, continues. We have another extra hour to go till the hour of 11 o'clock before we hand you over to Parliament. The Parliament of Uganda, of course, also concluding business for this particular session. Remember, Parliament will swear in, I think, on the 17th. Is it 17th or 16th? The new 11th Parliament. So the current Parliament, the 10th Parliament, is actually winding up with business. And so before we get out of studios, of course, we will conclude our discussion this morning before we get to Parliament. Now, joining us in studios today is Ambassador Dr. Aziz from Tanzania's ambassador to Uganda, and sister here, Mwasioka from Tanzanian Broadcasting Corporation, joining us. We'll take a short break. And when we return with the break, we'll have another female guest in studios who shall also join us here to carry on with the discussion. My name is Jagan Samakola. Let's take a break and return.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra. Sponsored by Cleveland Hill Day and Boarding Primary School. The Lord is my shepherd.
Kapo, you seem to be in a hurry. Where are you going to?
I'm gonna pay URA visit.
But you can access URA online. Why pay a visit?
To know more about the Kakasa business solutions, namely digital tracking solution, the voluntary disclosure program, and electronic fiscal receipting and invoicing solution, which have turned my business around. You know I need to be on top of my game to protect my empire. If you know, you know.
I too need to know what Kapo knows.
Kakasa, be sure you are in charge of your business. Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Introducing Cleveland Hill Day and Boarding Primary School, located in Chebando, Chisalusalu, along Bukoto Roundabout, 2 kilometers from Kalere at the Northern Bypass on your way to Chisasi. This is a world-class standard school with the most qualified teachers that will turn your child into a world changer. We have a fully stocked library, a balanced diet for the children, a calm environment suitable for learning, and pocket-friendly school fees. Registration for P1 to P6 is ongoing, and second term is starting on 6th April 2021. Call us on 0774 950 277 or 0705 861 262 for more information. Cleveland Hill Day and Boarding Primary School. The Lord is my shepherd.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Central Points when you deposit, send, and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Echa COVID-19 chijja kugwa. If we get vaccinated now, observe social distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly. Together we can defeat this enemy.
Introducing Cleveland Hill Day and Boarding Primary School, located in Chebando, Chisalusalu, along Bukoto Roundabout, 2 kilometers from Kalere at the Northern Bypass on your way to Chisasi. This is a world-class standard school with the most qualified teachers that will turn your child into a world changer. We have a fully stocked library, a balanced diet for the children, a calm environment suitable for learning, and pocket-friendly school fees. Registration for P1 to P6 is ongoing, and second term is starting on 6th April 2021. Call us on 0774 950 277 or 0705 861 262 for more information. Cleveland Hill Day and Boarding Primary School. The Lord is my shepherd. Live. This is Good Sponsored by Cleveland Hill Day and Boarding Primary School. The Lord is my shepherd.
Well, thank you so much, Cleveland Hill Mixed Day and Boarding Primary School, for partnering with us here on UBC TV every day. It's a Pan-African Friday. My name is Jaga Dasamakola Ziksoka, and of course, carrying on with our discussion today of Kiswahili as a Pan-African language. And of course, joining us in studios is Candid Knight. She's a lecturer at Mackay University, Kampala, and from the College of Humanities. You're very welcome, Dada Candid Knight. Karibu. What does Candid mean?
Frank and straightforward.
So it's the English Candid?
Yes.
It's the English Candid. Yes. Well, I'm happy to have you here. And of course, you get us midway the discussion of Kiswahili as a Pan-African language. I know that you also lecture Kiswahili at the university.
I used to, but I've been teaching it in secondary schools.
Oh, you've been teaching
primary schools.
Okay.
Yeah. I've taught it in colleges, in universities. Yeah, it's what I know, it's what I've done most.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they appreciative of the language itself? Your students, for example, do they appreciate the language?
Yeah. The students that we teach, we first teach them why they need to learn the language. The importance of learning Swahili language. Like in the prior discussion, there are always those sentiments about the language, the pandagadi, like people in Uganda have always known. But when we sensitize them and show them how important this language is and how it is not only spoken in Uganda, but also in the whole of East Africa, Burundi, Rwanda, DRC, Tanzania, Kenya, Malawi, Zambia, then we go ahead and tell them that Kiswahili is not only spoken in African countries, but it is also broadcast in foreign media houses. Yes. For example, Kiswahili is broadcast on Radio Koran in German. It is broadcast in China.
In German.
Yes. In China, they broadcast Kiswahili.
Japan.
Yes. In Japan, they broadcast Kiswahili in their media houses. And when they come to know about all this, then they appreciate why they have to learn the language. Okay. And sometimes when time allows, we give them travel trips to neighboring countries, to Tanzania.
That speak Kiswahili.
Yes, and before they move out, they don't know how important it is to learn the language. But when they reach there, they really appreciate why they have to learn the language more than what they thought. And it makes them more comfortable. They learn it, they put more emphasis on it, and they even, there are many opportunities of them getting jobs.
Okay. And now that also brings it to another question here is yes. Balozi, the ambassador, talked about it here and said when the language came in here, it started out as a trade language. Yeah. When you talk to people today to learn Kiswahili, they would imagine they are learning Kiswahili, yes, but are they going into trade? Because they think learning Kiswahili is only premised at me being ready to go and do business in Tanzania, in Kenya, or maybe in the region. But if I am thinking of becoming a member of parliament in Uganda, if I am thinking about becoming a CEO of a parastatal in Uganda, then why would I even learn Kiswahili? And I think that's what I think. Kiswahili is a trade language. That perception, how do you manage it with your students?
Thank you very much. A parliamentarian is not just a member of only one community. And when you become a parliamentarian, you don't only speak the language that everyone will understand. There's my mother in the village who cannot understand English, but Kiswahili is a language that is associated with Africans. It's a language that is easy for each and every person to pick something at least. So when we are teaching our students, we let them know that it's not only for traders, it's a language that is needed by everyone. Because I happened to travel to Malaysia one time, but when I reached there, incidentally, those people thought in Africa everyone knows Kiswahili.
When you went to Malaysia?
Yes. They thought Kiswahili, yes, it's an African language.
Okay.
And whenever you tell them I'm from Africa, whoever has ever been to Africa will say habari. So meaning that it's already people know it's a language that should unify us as Africans. It's a language that should keep us afloat, should help us unite, putting aside all our tribal differences, all our ethnicities, we put them aside, and it becomes a unifying language that can make us move a step further in development, in everything we are doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very important. Akol, before I come to you, let me speak to the ambassador, Dr. Aziz. There is an identity crisis on the continent, and I'll tell you this from a small study that I personally did in this country. I went to Nsambia Police Barracks, and I interacted with some young children, very young teenagers, 13, 14, and I found out that they didn't have a single language that they could speak up to about maybe 30%. Now, they could speak some little English, they could speak some little Kiswahili, they spoke some little Uganda, and this particular girl that I was talking to could also speak some little Luo language, because she comes from northern Uganda. She comes from Lira, she's a Langi. And the issues, my interaction with her was, you don't seem to know, of course, all languages, and you could feel for her. But the simple understanding is, in the morning she wakes up and goes to school, and at school she finds teacher Candid who teaches English. Now she gets instructions in English. Then when she comes home, she's in a barrack setting. Then at the quarter guard, the officers in there speak Swahili. Let us soda, cigara, nini. Then she gets that. Now when she's playing with the fellow children in the then they're speaking Uganda. And so in the evening when mommy comes back or daddy comes back, then she changes to that little Luo. So you notice that there is an identity crisis of a person who does not know where to excel most, and I think this is with us. You in Tanzania could have gone a step higher than the rest of us, and we are talking about a language that should incorporate this young girl that I interacted with, who speaks 20% of every language that she possibly understands. How are we going to manage that identity crisis to ensure that, okay, we will say we've grown in English, we'll have English there, but we need to also up our Kiswahili, and at least say we can speak Kiswahili 70%, all of us in the region.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me make a reference to Tanzania while I'm trying to answer your question. I think about 65 years ago, somewhere around there, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, when he was trying to fight for independence of Tanganyika, he realized that problem. And we had these similar scenarios in Tanganyika at that time, where you have 120 different tribal languages, and people, some speak English, some had some German, knowledge, and they are tribal languages. So in order to create a nation or a state, he realized that if you have to fight for independence and then build a nation, you need to have a common language. And Swahili was there already. So he decided to build on that. And I think it was the right decision, and it made it easy for Tanganyika at that time to fight for independence, and got it by December 1961. I think 2-3 years ago, no, actually it was 3 years ago, I attended a funeral service at the University of Dar es Salaam. There was one Don who was teaching Kiswahili at the Swahili Research Institute. I think his name was Dr. Stephen Mrikaria. And this guy, he used to have Swahili students coming from different parts of Africa. And then there was one student who was making vote of thanks. He was doing the vote of thanks. And he gave a very, very good speech in Kiswahili. And by the end of his speech, he asked the audience, I have just one humble request to give respect to Dr. Stephen Mrikaria. Can anyone in this audience tell me, except for the staff of the University of Dar es Salaam, can anyone in this audience tell me where am I coming from? Where am I from? And the guests like us were just looking at each other. We couldn't tell. So the room went quiet. And then he said, actually, I'm from Ghana. I'm a PhD student here. I learned Swahili from here. And you couldn't tell if he was not a Tanzanian because of his Swahili was so good. Without any trace of accent or anything. So you find people coming from West Africa, a Ghanaian, who have their, maybe his Ashanti or his whatever tribe he has there. He speaks English, he speaks the local language, but he decided to come to East Africa to learn Swahili at the University of Dar es Salaam and do a PhD. He's going to be a researcher in some of the universities in Europe and America, which have African and Oriental studies, teaching Swahili. And he's not from East Africa. And, you know, so Swahili, if you look at it, if you give it a 50 years trajectory from today, I think it's the right time to make a decision now that we need to adopt Swahili as a unifier, as a Pan-African language, than waiting until maybe the next 50 years. You'll find us, we are lagging behind. Everybody else, even the West Africans, will be further ahead than some of us here in East Africa. So I think we need to move on and accept Swahili as it is. It's not a Tanzanian language, it's a Pan-African language.
How does it feel that you go to Malaysia? She just talked to us about that, that people out of Africa think we should be speaking Swahili. We in Africa do not even understand that we should be speaking Swahili. How does it feel that somebody else from outside looks at you and says this should be your language, and yet internally we actually don't appreciate that? What's the feeling like?
I think because these people, they've realized that Swahili is a language which is spoken by a wider community in Africa. And that's why they assume that if you're African, probably understand some Swahili, which is probably not the case. You know, today if you go to Seychelles, you may find people speaking Swahili there. Yeah. And Seychelles is an island. They don't have direct trading, you know, like here you share Uganda, common borders, cross borders trading and things like that, like Uganda and Tanzania and DRC and you know, South Sudan. So I think we have more advantage, most of us who are in continental Africa, to learn and adopt languages which can unify us than divide us. Yeah.
Very important. A call. We look at Kiswahili, of course, as a Pan-African language, and we're looking at its challenges and the identity, the crisis that we have on the continent. And what do you think needs to be done now that the ambassador is saying, if we put it to a trajectory of 50 years, maybe by the time we achieve the African dream of 2063, if we also decided to push and moot Kiswahili as a language, do you think by 2063, when we celebrate 100 years of African Union, African unity, we shall have achieved something to a great percentage?
Well, they say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Yeah, but before I can get into that, I wish to welcome my lecturer at National Teachers College, Kapoa. Actually, that was the first college in Uganda to train Swahili teachers. Actually, 90% of Swahili lecturers now in Uganda pass through that college and passed through her hands. She was one of our lecturers there. But I just want to get to what you are saying, is that first of all, even in China, China has over 200 tribes and languages, but they picked on Mandarin Chinese. The one we call Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. So implying that even in their own languages, but they still stick to Mandarin Chinese as a language of identity. Now let's look at, you really talked about how will West Africa embrace Swahili. Because I've actually participated in activities of African Union Language Academy and East African Swahili Commission, one interesting thing that actually we discovered was that in the 1960s, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah had an understanding of developing Swahili as a Pan-African language via communication. To that effect, there has been an exchange program where students from Ghana every year are sent to Tanzania and actually study there, and also teachers from Tanzania are sent to Ghana. It will surprise you that Ghana has about 10 universities teaching Swahili. Now, still in 1960s, when there was a mutiny, actually a mutiny in Tanzania of the army, where Nyerere disbanded the army and got the army from Nigeria to come and help him establish the army. The army that came in Tanzania, when they went back home, actually they went with the spirit of Swahili, and they sold it to their government. We need to have a language, just like Tanzanians are doing. So it's also going to interest you that in Lagos you have radio stations, you have some televisions, you have universities that actually teaching Swahili. Now the other issue that also the viewer and the public needs to appreciate is that when Ben Bella convinced other Pan-Africans who were fighting for the for the independence of Africa, said, look here, we need to come up with a radio station so that we don't depend on this propaganda news from the West. The first radio station that was set in Cairo, actually the first language they used there was Swahili. So these are facts that really that are there, not associate Swahili with only the East African region. Now, back to the issue, definitely challenges are there, and the challenge is that unlike French, unlike Swahili, unlike English, Swahili has no funder. That you're not going to find that there's a particular organization, there's a particular country that is going to fund the development of Swahili. Therefore, the development of Swahili is supposed to be done by the Africans, that we have to really sit down and look at that. Now, on the question of the identity issue, and I'll give you a very good example of the Francophone countries. Whereas we from the Anglophone countries, we just want to concentrate on English, speak good English, and think that is all. But people from the Francophone countries would want to learn their French, we learn English, we learn Kiswahili, and we learn Arabic. This takes us back to when Dr. Speciosa Kazwe was aspiring to become the chairperson of the AU Commission. One of the things that was her biggest undoings that she would only speak English, and they said at least you must speak 3 international languages. In Africa we have 5 working languages. We have Arabic, we have Kiswahili, we have English, French, and Portuguese. So this is a challenge to us Ugandans here, that at every other time there's a continental opportunity, we just parade our English. Yes, Uganda is one of the countries that speaks English very well, actually, in the world. It was ranked among the countries that speak English, but English alone is not going to take us anywhere.
Okay, well, very important, and you know, when you talk about that, I also visited New Zealand and had an opportunity to speak somewhere or to preach somewhere, and I spoke in English or I preached in English, and they were very surprised that an African could actually speak very good English.
Better than them.
Better than them, actually. So the Kiwis were so surprised, the Maoris were so surprised that there is an African who speaks very good and fluent English, better than them. And of course, it's not even a pride in a way. But Mutut, I'll start with you on this particular one. Talk about the role of language in national development, because where there is no language, of course, there is no development. You've all talked about China and, of course, all the other countries. We have 5 languages on the continent. When you look into the documents of the African Union, it's every communique in there, every other document in there, every other circular in there, it is in English, and there is one version in French. The idea is to balance jargon who reads English to actually read and understand, then another who reads French to also get there. But the countries that you're talking about, talk about China, for example, now they have their Mandarin Chinese, which is a language they have used to all develop, with so many languages in there. But you talk about a population of 1 billion people communicating the same way. When you go to Japan, for example, when you go to the other countries, you'll notice that all these countries that have developed and become very powerful nations in the world share one very common thing, which is language. When you come back to our settings here, it is even at national level, you'll notice that if the president is addressing the nation or speaking to a particular community, then the president has to have an interpreter. You know, and you know, you're not even sure whether the interpreter will actually deliver the president's message the way it is. But the people are listening to the president, but they're saying, okay, until somebody translates to us to understand what the president is saying. Yet you have countries where if the president in Tanzania, for example, is speaking, and Mama Samia is speaking Kiswahili, you're sure that every Tanzanian from one end of the country to the other end of the country will actually be able to know that the president spoke to us today, and this is what you're communicating. Just looking at language itself, do you look at Kiswahili as that language that will help us develop the continent of Africa? We have the African Dream of 2063. When you look at it, there's so many things, the aspirations of the continent, that's where we want to be. Do you think that if we build towards a unifying language and choose the Pan-African language, for example, that nobody owns, because if we say, let's get the West African way and maybe speak French, then it will be a different thing. But we're saying, if we adopted Kiswahili, will it help us develop and grow the continent?
Yeah, but I think we also don't have many options when it comes to the adoption of Kiswahili. We should have already done that, because language is power, is the warmth, that the cement that put people together. For people who read the Bible, when these guys sat down and they said, we now need to build a tower.
Genesis chapter 11, talk about the Tower of Babel.
One thing that failed that tower was the disorganization of the language.
Multiple languages.
Yes. Yeah. So if God did not disorganize them with language, according to the writing that they were determined. So language is power. The people can speak together and understand something at the same time and believe in what they do. That is power. So for Africans, we need to have that power of language. And like he put it, people are sponsoring English classes because they want to promote that English. It is their English. The people, the French, and I heard the other time the Africans in some country are fighting over who should speak English and another one who should speak French. It's madness. But when you look at this particular issue of language, until such a time that we can speak one language that is going to be unifying for all Africans, then we don't have that power. Because why should an African speaking to another African have an interpreter in between, so that one is speaking English, another one is speaking French, and then we have to have an interpreter too? And yet, if we are going to speak Swahili, however bad it is, everyone, even the English, by the way, some people speak it badly, but still
very broken English,
yes.
But that's English.
Yeah. So I think it's a high time as Africans to step back and identify things that, like Wole Soyinka wrote, that bring us together. Language is one of them. And this is no option that we need to have this language, and we study it, and because even people who have not gone to school and can listen to a few people speak, they can pick a few words, because like we said, a lot of Swahili are the common expressions and words that and verbs that we use in our common, especially the Bantu languages.
Dada Candid here, let me come to you on this particular one. We talk about the language, but when you look at the statistics, I'm not very certain of the numbers, of the figures of the people who speak Swahili on the continent vis-a-vis those who do not speak. Now we talk about a continent that is 1 billion people plus. And if you don't have 30 or 40% of those speaking Swahili, would it be a good idea to actually even moot Kiswahili as a Pan-African language in a population of 1 billion people, and you have just a handful of those, 100 million, 200 million speaking the same language?
To me, why I think Kiswahili should be the language to choose is that there is no single tribe that will claim it, that will say this is mine and will pride in it. The fact that it's a language that does not have any specific tribe claiming it, it becomes a good language that will connect all of us without prejudice, without anything. And the whole of Africa will say, will pick on it, learn it. The beauty is that it's a very simple language to learn. It's very easy to learn. it's not a hard language like French. I'm not biased, but I'm talking about because I teach it, I know what it is. So it's so easy to learn. So to me, I feel whoever does not know it today, it's very easy to learn it because it's a simple language to learn, and it's an African language. That's the beauty about it. So however much there could be so many people who don't know it, but if a step was taken that all Africans use Kiswahili as a language, there will be a lot of programs on TV, on radio to teach Kiswahili. I commend the government of Uganda for taking a step to ensure that people learn it, because right now as we are talking, however much we are talking of challenges of teaching it because of the bias people have on it, it's one of the compulsory language to be taught in the senior one curriculum, in the new one. However much most head teachers of secondary schools were removing it from the curriculum, they were saying, you know, we can't teach it. And like he said, how can you stop teaching German, which has a funder? How can you stop teaching English, which is, you know,
Mandarin?
Yes, yes. So, but the government of Uganda has taken a step to help. So if all the countries in Africa take a step and make sure all schools have a bit of the language. I remember when I was still teaching at Bishop Stewart College, where I taught my colleague there, we had
Bishop Stewart College.
It was called NTC Kakowa, National Teachers College Kakowa then, which is now the Bishop Stewart University. So we had a certificate of proficiency, which would teach to all students, irrespective of which course they are doing. And it would be there every day, early in the morning. And people doing all the other courses would come and join and learn, and would give them a certificate of proficiency. So I feel if all the nations embrace Kiswahili as a language, a unifying language, then they would take a step to give that certificate of proficiency to everyone and provide classes whereby people can be taught Kiswahili, and we call it competency learning. We teach them based on what they need, the needs that they have, and they will be able to speak that Kiswahili.
Isn't it like to start in senior one? Why wouldn't we start in as early as kindergarten, primary one, and of course all those, as opposed to waiting for senior one? Because the challenge here is you bring it in senior one, somebody finds a problem learning the language maybe for 4 years. They think about being doctors in the future, they think about being lawyers, they think about being engineers, and they're thinking, what does Kiswahili have to do with being an engineer? My concentration should be on physics, chemistry, and all these others. Don't you think that if we just want them to understand and appreciate the language, it would be prudent that we started much earlier, that learn Kiswahili from primary one, get to senior 4, decide to go and study medicine, become a doctor, an engineer, or anything, but when you know the language?
Thank you very much. That's what had been planned, by the way, before. Okay. And even materials are there, they were developed for teaching Kiswahili at primary level, because they started with teacher training colleges. Okay. And these teachers were supposed to roll the Kiswahili to primary schools and then roll it over to secondary schools. But because of those challenges, that's the reason why it had not taken over. But when we look at the senior one, the new curriculum that is there, it is a competency-based curriculum. Because if you are an engineer and you come to my place and you can't speak my language, how will you do for me the work? If you're a doctor and you can't understand what I'm speaking, how will you treat me? So when we have Kiswahili as a unifying language, and in this senior one where they have introduced it to make it compulsory, it's very good. To me, it's very good. And I would advise all the countries on the nation of Africa, or on the continent of Africa, to adopt it. It's good. It will unite us. It will be the cement to put us together, to put all the bricks together, and development will be very fast. That's the reason you see China has developed so much, because they have one language that unites them, that puts all things together. And now, like referring to what he said, when God came from heaven and came to see what was happening during the construction of the Tower of Babel. When he reached there, he saw people are determined.
Very determined.
And he said, well, let's
make them Jaluo, Baganda, Luyas, Kamba, Chagas, make them Fulanis, and you know, somebody speaking Chaga, the other speaking Fulani, and the other speaking Lumasab.
Say, bring sand, this one would bring a spade. So everything collapsed. So Kiswahili language is the only language I see that can really hold us together as Africans, and all of us will benefit from it. Yeah.
It has taken you time, Dr. Aziz, to build Kiswahili in Tanzania, to actually have it as a language in there that you use to do business, you use for official work, and of course all the things. It has really taken you time, and you're actually there. We would admire that the rest of us on the continent also get that way. But then the issue here is, for example, when you talk about Kiswahili in the region, there is an analogy. They say Kiswahili was born in Tanzania, it grew in Kenya, it finally died in Uganda, and Berry was taken to Congo. So if you're looking for the value grounds of Kiswahili, then you have to go to Congo in a way. What do you think needs to be done by the rest of the other African countries to adopt, to steadily learn and inculcate this language called Kiswahili amongst their people, to fed? I am sure there are so many other tribes in Tanzania. All the times I've been to Tanzania, it's rare that you get to a place and find people speaking a language that you do not know, and ask them, they tell you they're speaking Chaga, they're speaking maybe this. Is wherever you go, you'll find Kiswahili, basic, however much it may be. What do you think needs to be done by the rest of us to get to where Tanzania is?
Thank you very much for that question. But let me walk you through a little bit from my previous life. I used to be a personal assistant to former President late Benjamin Mkapa. Okay. And between 2006 and 2007, he was a member of high-level commission of United Nations, which was, they were doing a report, legal empowerment of the poor. And it was under Hernando de Soto and Madeleine Albright as the co-chairs. And that report came up with very good proposals. And it was supposed to be adopted. It was decided that it has to be adopted not only with the United Nations, but it has to be also adopted by the African Union. So we were given that responsibility as a member of the panel who were Africans to go and present it at the African Union. So one of the conditions which we were given before we tabled it to the AU Secretariat in Addis was that it has to include the working languages of the African Union. So the language which we were given in the list, that it has to be in French, English, Arabic, Portuguese, Spanish, and Kiswahili. And then we say, okay, so Kiswahili is there. And no any other African language apart Kiswahili. So Kiswahili is already a pan-African language in terms of the African.
No other African language.
No any other African language.
There's English, there's Arabic, there's Portuguese,
French, Spanish, for Equatorial and Kiswahili. So we had to request, we had to do the translation. And the United Nations did a tendering process for people to translate from the UN working languages to Kiswahili, because Kiswahili was the only language which was not there, because the other languages were part of the United Nations. So then it was tendered, and a certain company in New York won won the translation. I mean, it won the tender to do the translation.
New York. So
yeah. It was in New York, yes. So they are the ones who did the Kiswahili translation from the United Nations document to a language which is going to be tabled in the African Union. So that publication is there. It is in Addis, and it was, I think it was adopted in January 2008 with the African Union. But I was trying to highlight the importance of Kiswahili, and it is the only African language which is recognized by the African Union. And I think the first president who gave a speech in Kiswahili in the African Union, it was President Joaquim Chissano. It was not any president from Tanzania or any president from Kenya or Uganda. It was Joaquim Chissano. He's the one who said that Swahili should be adopted as the African language. And I think since he moved that motion, then it was adopted as one of the African language. And we were forced, in order to put to table that that report from the UN, to make sure that we have a Swahili translation. But coming back to your question, what can be done? I think the SADC countries have started. South African today, they have curricula from the primary schools all the way to introduce Swahili. I mean, all the schools have introduced Kiswahili as one of the required subject. And give South Africa the next 10, 15 years, if they are going to do what they've started, Kiswahili will be like the way it is in Kenya today. Yeah. Because if you start with the children, I mean, usually children can learn up to 5 languages without any problem. If you start with them much earlier, between the age of 5 to the age of 12, they'll be able to learn multiple languages. And girls can learn up to 7 languages at a go. Yeah, girls, yes. Yeah. Boys can learn 5 languages as native speakers. So if you give them a chance, you'll be surprised. Yeah.
Using that for development, do you think that if we learn Kiswahili and that would also help us develop as a continent? Because we talk about all these very niceties, very good things on the continent, the mineral resources and every other thing that we have here, and we don't seem to be that very developed. We still go, you know, we have all the arable land, but we still starve and all the things. If we learn Kiswahili, would it also help us develop, like we see Chinese, we see Japanese, we see the other people who have developed their language?
I think it was easy for them to develop because they use their own language. They can think through, they can analyze things much easier than using a foreign language. And they can do a lot of research, you know, a lot of stuff, because then the language they are using is their native language. But learning from, I mean, learning a foreign language and then you want to master it, and then come up with trying to do some of the stuff. You may find that you spend a lot of time learning the language itself to master it, even before you start thinking deeply to be able to come up with maybe scientific analysis of some sort and some scientific innovation and discoveries. So I think the advantage which the people like the Russians, the Chinese and the Japanese and all these other developed nations, they've been using their own language, and it's easy to develop in science and social sciences and hard sciences and all these sort of things. So I think language is the key. And Africa as a continent, we shouldn't be too comfortable with our own tribal silos, where, oh, you know, me, I'm a Tanzanian and I belong to this tribe, I should stick to my my own tribe and you know, teach my kids my tribal language. It's good to know, but it shouldn't be the only limitation that they shouldn't learn other languages. Sure. The reason why Tanzania is where it is today, because we adopted Kiswahili, and Kiswahili helped us to be a peaceful nation.
Yeah.
Because if everybody was sticking to his tribe, we could kill each other maybe many years ago. Yeah, but that is not the case.
You just made a very important point here, Dr. Ziz, and I want my brother Mtuta to pick it up from there. Tanzania is that very peaceful nation because they buried their tribal silos, like you said, and adopted a language that unifies them. Now, nobody owns Kiswahili. Back home here in Uganda, when you speak, they will say, Anti Kubangu li Muganda. Now, I'll be accused of either being a Muganda or being a Mnyankole or being a Gishu or whatever that is. And the peace itself. Now, you'll notice that on the continent where we have so many civil wars, now away from the political issues that people normally bear or have, is you also notice that many of these civil wars are ignited on tribal issues or out of tribal clashes in a way. Recently, when South Sudan was just getting their independence, a year later, it started crumbling. Why? Because there was a fight between one tribe and another tribe who were together. They were united against one force. Now, when they got what their bargain was, is again they started splitting over issues over you are that and I am this. Did you think that if we adopted Kiswahili like Tanzania is, that peace, would it help us have a peaceful continent to also minimize on the several civil wars that we have that have riddled the continent?
Because tribal sentiments affect our daily life in terms of decisions that we take. Because I belong to this ethnic grouping, I'm likely to decide what to do and how to do it based on what I've been told, the information that has been passed on from the past. But where you have a unifying agent as language, then it works out a lot of those small differences, because then you are looking at yourself as a people of some group, not necessarily those small demarcations. And like I put it, you understand each other well. There was this test of communication. If I whispered to you something here, and you whisper to everyone, by the time it comes back to me, it will be a different thing. Now, so that transparency is that whatever one has spoken from some area will be understood the same way from another area. Other than when you say we have here some common analogy which has been lingering up today, when Ebote said that, so the good Muganda is a dead one. And people said, Kumbe, he has said really a good Muganda is a dead one. Of course, that's not what he meant. Or if that's what he meant, then that is what was heard.
Nobody remembers why he said it.
Exactly.
When you ask everybody, Dr. Boto said the good Muganda is a dead one.
Exactly.
Where was he?
Yeah.
Nobody remembers where.
So contextualization of the messages that are passed on, because we said language is a very strong tool. Now, if that is not understood, then we lose everything.
Okay.
That young man, this is what he said, because we're trying to explain to someone something that one
you are a reporter.
Yes. So, but if language issue is sorted out, that people are understanding the same message at the same time, given the same space, then even the follow-up, that's some sort of development in terms of understanding. The Kenyan say Fatanyayo, we follow because we have understood the message. But once the message has to be interpreted again through some other agency, then there are going to be misinterpretations and there are going to be delays in decisions, and that's what affects Africa. If someone is going to speak in French, the interpreter is not going to tell you to detail what exactly, because when you interpret,
they will tell you the understanding.
Yes, but you are not going to interpret the mood, you are not going to interpret the facial expressions and the body language. So that also, that warmth is disconnected.
Okay.
So language is very key, and like we said, language is very important.
Okay.
If it is not connect, if the communication is not connected and the people are not connected, the countries are not connected, then it lays a lot in terms of now suspicion and misunderstanding.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'll come back to you, Dr. Aziz, and pick it up from there. But if you're out there and you want to participate or be part of a Pan-African Friday, the numbers to call are on your screen: 0752 2320. 23 24 25. That's the number to call. Just call us, and from where you are, ask a question. With us in studios is Ambassador Dr. Aziz. He's Tanzania's ambassador to Uganda, of course joining us on Pan-African Friday. And we also have Sister Candid, who is she's a lecturer from the College of Humanities at Makerere University, but also a lecturer of a teacher of Kiswahili in colleges and in schools and elsewhere, so you can participate. Doctor, back to you.
Thank you very much. Yesterday we went to Chambongo University. The team from UBC, the team from Tanzanian Broadcasting Corporation. TBC, yeah. And a lecturer from the University of Chambongo. We were highly impressed by the students there, and most of them were Ugandans and some few from other East African countries. All of them were speaking Swahili in that debate. There were a group, I think, more than 100 students. Chambongo University, they are teaching Kiswahili there, Swahili as a language, and their performance was amazing. And in that group discussion they held yesterday, it was very, very difficult to tell who is Mugisu, who is Baganda, who is Acholi, who is Langi, or so you could see that the Swahili was a unifier in that particular audience yesterday. And I think if we continue like that, from the primary level to all the way to the university, it won't take long before we forgot and bury all these differences we have in our comfort zone of tribal silos. So I think this is the way to go.
Very important. A call, gleaning on the ambassador's submission, is that Tanzania is a peaceful country because they have a unifier language, which is Kiswahili. You would think that maybe Kenya would be the same, but we've seen trouble really in Kenya for some time. The Kenyans at times, but then when they remember we are in an election and candidate X is a Jaluo, then they remember they are Jaluos. Candidate X is a Kikuyu, then they remember they are Kikuyu. They lose the Kenyanism, and they adopt now these things. What do you think needs to be maybe learned from Tanzania? That would think that having a unifying language, like for example, when you go to Kenya, you'll speak Kiswahili across Kenya, from wherever you are, from Garissa to the border in Malaba, you go to wherever you go in Kenya. But they have a lot of these other tribal issues when they come to certain issues. Why do you think Kiswahili is exactly not helping them be that very peaceful nation?
Well, first of all, I just want maybe to set the record straight, because language alone cannot lead to development. Language alone actually cannot lead to peace. Language is just a facilitator. In other words, it just helps other factors to achieve. But language itself, because for example, in Rwanda and Burundi, ideally they speak the same language. In Burundi it is Kirundi, in Rwanda it is Kinyarwanda, but you saw what happened in 1994. So language, in Somalia actually, they all speak Somali, but you see what is happening there. So language alone actually cannot, but language is just a facilitator. The question of peace and the question of development very much has to do with the ruling class, very much has to do with the leadership. That is why Kwame Nkrumah said, seek first the political kingdom and the rest will follow. So once you have such a focused leadership that is development oriented, that is actually unity oriented, you'll always have that much unity. So what I would want to say is that Kiswahili can be a facilitator of development on the continent, can be a facilitator of unity that is helping other factors which are actually key in that, and in this particular area, leadership is really very, very important. Now, the other issue that I also wish to bring out here clearly is that Swahili, being a Pan-African language of wider communication, that is of course that is already a foregone conclusion, because it has already been adopted. What is now is how do we move towards achieving that. But I think the most important issue here is to how does Swahili coexist with our languages. That I call my kids should learn Ateso, should learn Lukonzo, as well as learning Kiswahili. Jagenda, your kids should learn Luo, should learn Luganda alongside this. So that should, because in Tanzania actually, I remember as part of the team that was looking at, that was doing research in the region on competencies in Kiswahili. And one of the issues that came out from Tanzania is that these minor tribes like the Wazaramo, actually most of them have forgotten their language. It has been eaten up by Swahili. And we're saying now, look here, now, how do we accept Swahili as a Pan-African language of wider communication without necessarily having it to kill our other languages? Yes, that is very important. Then the other issue that actually came out was we had some because when the South Africans actually we are really before the declared Swahili as one of the languages that are going to be taught in schools, compulsory at secondary, primary, and universities. They sent a team to East Africa, and I was privileged to be part of the people actually that met that team. So one of the issues was, look here, Swahili has 70% of the Bantu, of the vocabulary are from the Bantu languages. But the 70% of the vocabulary is just from East Africa, and then maybe Central Africa. When we talk of Central Africa, we shall maybe talk about Congo. Said, then how are we also going to be part of this so that we can also see the Xhosa words, Zulu words, okay, in Kiswahili? And that's what they told them that no, I think that's when the African Union Language Academy came up with a Swahili corpus, so they can see how do they really integrate some of their vocabularies from that area. And I believe the next dictionary that is actually going to come out from Tataki Institute of Swahili Studies will have at least now some vocabularies from West Africa, I mean from South Africa, from the southern part of Africa, so that they can also feel that they are part of the growth of the language. Yes.
Okay, very important. Our time is running out. Mututa, I'll come to you for your final submissions to this. May talk about Kiswahili itself. How can we adopt Kiswahili as a Pan-African language for wider communication without necessarily killing our indigenous tribal silos, even when they shouldn't be the determinant?
Yeah, of course, it's not easy that the small our languages will disappear, but this will only be a facilitating language in terms of communication with other people from outside our social rings, our traditional family rings, that you'll be able to talk to a person from Tanzania without fear, talk to a person from Congo, talk to a person. And of course the issue of that which you raised of having born in Tanzania and kills and dies in somewhere and then buried in Congo is the standardization, that because we don't have we didn't in the past have the standard way of speaking English, I mean of Swahili like we had with English, that when you go to Congo, a person is going to tell you the Bantuba Congo, and that is their English. You go to another person is telling you in Uganda, there's some common expressions people talk about when we're speaking English. But now, once it is taken up as a medium of communication, especially now being taught in schools by competent teachers like her, we are going to have a standard. The same English, I mean Swahili, which is spoken in Kenya, is the same which is spoken in Tanzania, is the same spoken in Zaire, so that you have it standardized. Otherwise, if we don't have the medium, then standardization becomes a problem. But with that, I know we are going to move. And even with that, we are not going to lose our local languages, our small tribal languages, because there are certain things that where Swahili will not come in when we are doing other things, where we're having a mass in the local tradition. It may not be in Swahili. But of course, I was also very happy when we were in Zambia, I think, yes, and the parade was, instructions were being given in Swahili. You feel connected.
What?
Yes.
In Zambia.
Yeah. You feel
was in Kiswahili.
Exactly. So you feel related, and you feel that belonging as an African and as a Pan-African. That is very important.
Okay.
So there are certain things that will bring us together as Africans, and I'll be proud of that. Of course, there are many things that we'll talk about as Africans that we have left, and yet they're very important to us now. Language is one of them.
Thank you so much. Sister Candid, your final remarks on this in just 1 minute about Kiswahili as a Pan-African language for the continent.
Okay, thank you very much. My final remark on Kiswahili as a Pan-African language, I will encourage every African to learn Kiswahili. Because it's a very important language.
Can we learn Kiswahili without coming to class necessarily?
So long as you get someone speaking it and you interact, you will learn it.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy. It's very simple.
We don't have to go to class.
Yes.
We don't have to go to university to actually study Kiswahili. We just need to learn it as a language.
Yes, we need to learn it as a language and speak it. You know, when you start speaking, then you speak a long word, then someone corrects you, then you speak, eventually you learn it.
Exactly.
2019, I got an opportunity to move with a group of people to Zanzibar, Dar es Salaam, Kenya, who were not Kiswahili speakers. But I saw how they were suffering and fidgeting, and wherever they would want to go, they would say, please Candid, come and go with us. We can't buy anything, we can't negotiate for anything. Please come and go with us.
And those days, Google could not even help you.
So I would encourage every African to learn Kiswahili, because it's an African language, and it's already a Pan-African language, because he has
the ambassador from
he has already told us that it's the only African language that was included
on the list of languages.
Yes,
exactly.
on the list of languages. So I will encourage all Africans, wherever you are, to learn Kiswahili. It's a good language. It's an easy language. It will help all of us, and it will make us one. And we'll develop, we'll be friends with each other. Sometimes I preach the word of God, and I find it easy to first learn few words in somebody's language before I could interact with them.
It becomes so relevant when you're talking to them.
So when we speak one language and it's connecting all of us, we will be one Africa, one language, one people. And development will be at its peak.
Thank you so much, Sister Candid. Finally, Balozi, Ambassador, your final comment in just 1 minute before you get out of studios.
Thank you very much. I just want to give an example of a Ugandan student while we were doing our undergraduate. He was speaking very, very good Swahili, and he was my roommate during my undergraduate. Then I asked him, where did you learn your Swahili? He said, I learned it from the BBC Swahili service in Uganda. Because he embraced it. Yeah, his name was Businge Sau. I don't know where he is now. Businge Sau, yes. But he spoke very good Swahili at that time.
And he learned his Kiswahili on radio?
Here in Uganda.
BBC Kiswahili.
BBC Swahili service, yes.
Very important. Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Dr. Aziz, for having allowed to join us on UBC TV. Good morning, Pan-African Friday today. Thank you so much for having allowed to be with us, and thank you so much, Sister Candid, for also having joined us here. And earlier on, we had Sister Anna Mwasioke from TBC Tanzania. Asante Mtuta, asante ndugu Akol. We'll stop it here for today. My name is Uganda Semakola Ziksoka, and this marks the end of our Pan-African Friday for today. Just letting you know that very shortly, Parliament, of course, will be coming on. We'll return next week on Friday. Thanking you so much for choosing to be with us. A blessed weekend for God and my country. Stay blessed as we all look towards a greater united Africa. For God and my country, good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this Uganda Extra. Sponsored by Cleveland Hill Day and Boarding Primary School. The Lord is my shepherd.